Hi, folks. Welcome back to 3.3, Part 2. So let's take a look at this second section. We're talking about degrees and leading coefficients of polynomial function. All right. So we have our polynomial function that we talked about in the previous video. We've got something that looks like this. All right. But when we are in, and we're going to actually call this standard form, right? When something is in standard form, the degree of the polynomial is just the highest degree that you see, okay? And our leading coefficient is just the coefficient of the term with the highest degree, right? And together, we call this the leading term. So what I think we should do is we're going to take a look at these 4 examples below. But before we start on any of them, I want us to see which ones are in standard form, okay? And so if we scan through, we might see that example 6 and example 8 are both in standard form. And standard form, in case I didn't say it earlier, basically just means that we multiplied everything out. It's already FOILed for us, okay? So in standard form, if we want to find the degree and the leading coefficient, we have to find the term that is the leading term with the highest degree, and then that number in the front is the leading coefficient, all right? So let's see with example 6. We know that this is in standard form, all right? And we're going to scan through all the way through and see what is the highest degree or the highest power. And I actually see that it's not the 2, but it's actually the 6. So what I'm going to do real quick is I'm going to rewrite this in order from highest degree to lowest degree. So negative x to the 6th plus 4x squared plus 2x minus 6. Now we have something that is in standard form, okay? And if we want to find our degree, we'll go to the leading term now. And if we want to find, I'm going to call it the LC, the leading coefficient, it's just the number in the front. And so the degree here is 6 because that's the highest power we see. And the leading coefficient, it's not negative x, but it's negative 1. Okay, so in terms of finding leading terms, if it's in standard form, then that is actually a really straightforward process. Okay, so let's check out example 8, which is also in standard form. And let's see, is it already in powers from highest to lowest? I see a 5, 4, 2, perfect. This is already in standard form. All right, so now that just means we find our degree, and our leading coefficient should be from the very first term. So the highest power I see here is 5. So our degree is 5. And our leading coefficient is a 3. All right. So let's zoom back out for a moment. All right. So if it's in standard form, make sure we've got our highest power all the way down to our lowest power and find the degree and that leading coefficient. Okay. Now, when we have something that looks like example 5 and 7, okay, that's not called standard form, but rather we call that factored form, okay? And so what I'm going to do is right here next to this, we're going to talk about factored form. Okay, and so in factored form, what we really mean is that it's not FOILed out. All right, I haven't distributed anything. It's not FOILed out. So it turns out that all we need to do here is we need to find the degree by adding the powers. All right, so we're going to find the degree by adding the powers. And we're going to FOIL out just the highest powers. All right. By doing that, we're actually going to get our leading term. That's really the only thing we care about. We don't actually need to know what the rest of the polynomial in standard form looks like. We just need to know about the one with the highest power. Okay. So let's take that information and let's take a look at example 5 and example 7. All right, so example 5 here. I see that I've got a negative, and this is x to the first, this is x to the first. So if I were to pretend to FOIL out just the highest powers, I'd have negative x to the first, which is really negative x squared plus a bunch of stuff, okay? The other stuff, sure, we could find it if we wanted to. But this is actually enough information to give us our degree as well as our leading coefficient. Okay, our degree here is 2, that's the highest power, leading coefficient, -1. All right. Now, if you go back to here, I had said another way to kind of do this is find the degree by adding the powers. So let's see what I get here. 1 plus 1 gives me 2. Well, that's perfect. All right, so I take the 1 plus the 1, I add them to get the 2. All right, so if I didn't want to FOIL out just that first term, I could just add all my degrees and find that power there. All right, let's take a look at example 7. Okay, so let's try this time finding our multiplying out just the highest powers. So negative 3x squared, x, and x. These are secretly x to the first. All right, so that would give me negative 3x to the fourth, because x squared times x would be x to the fourth, plus a bunch of stuff. All right. Now I can double check that my degree is actually 4 by adding the 2, the 1, and the 1. 2 plus 1 plus 1 is 4, and it was also 4 when I multiplied them out. And our leading coefficient here is just that -3. Okay. So let me zoom out real quick. We'll take a look at this degree and leading coefficient of polynomials in standard and factored form. We have to have different strategies there. Okay, we have to have different strategies. Make sure you know how to recognize whether you're in factored form or whether you're in standard form. You don't want to confuse your rules, otherwise you'll get that leading term incorrect, okay? All right, so we're going to go ahead and stop here. Come on back for part 3.